Hello, and thank you for joining us on France 24. It's time for us to cast our collective eye on Africa. First up, the headlines. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu orders the recruitment of 30,000 more police officers following Friday's abduction of more than 300 children and 12 school staff from a Catholic school in Niger State. This as Nigeria reels from one of the worst school kidnappings since the 2014 Chibok mass abduction. European and African leaders meet in Angola for talks to deepen economic and security ties. On the agenda, trade, migration, and critical raw materials, as well as Russia's war in Ukraine. And Jamaican reggae legend Jimmy Cliff passed away at age 81 after a battle with pneumonia. He leaves behind a lasting legacy intrinsically tied to the African continent. Our journalist James Vecina will tell us more. We start in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has ordered the hiring of 30,000 more police officers following Friday's kidnapping of students and staff at the St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State. Gunmen broke into the school in the morning, abducting over 300 school children and 12 school staff members. In light of the recent surge in school attacks, several northern states have shut down schools, and the Nigerian government has also ordered the closure of 47 colleges in the north. This latest incident marks one of the country's worst mass school kidnappings, surpassing the infamous 2014 Chibok abduction, which saw 276 students snatched. And to delve further into this, I am joined by Isa Sanusi, Country Director of Amnesty International Nigeria. Thank you for being with us on the program, Isa. This is the second school kidnapping in a week. Last Monday, 25 other children were taken from a different state. Why are we seeing an upsurge now?
Well, the reason why we are seeing an upsurge is because security is increasingly deteriorating in Nigeria. When Chibok girls' abduction happened in 2014, we only have Boko Haram, but now we have many other militant or extremist groups and gunmen operating across northern Nigeria. So while there are many other reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was the fact that the armed groups and criminal gangs who are carrying arms are increasing their reach, increasing their own expansion within the country, and they are operating in more areas. And that is why this thing is escalating. And another thing is that since Chibok girl, these criminal gangs and militants have realized that when they abduct children, they get more attention, and that is why they are increasingly focusing on children and schools. And another problem that we noticed was the fact that there were allegations that in some cases in the past, ransom was paid to free children that were abducted from schools. And many people believe that that has given incentive for these groups to do so, because it will be easier for them to get money because of in the name of ransom. So these are some of the few reasons why these things are escalating. But in the overall, the biggest reason was the fact that security is not getting better in Nigeria.
And how did we get to this level of insecurity? Because school attacks are, as we've mentioned, not new, unfortunately. And how come the Nigerian authorities do not seem able to get a grip on the issue?
There are many reasons attributed to it, and one of them is that the fight against Boko Haram has been going on since 2009, and Boko Haram is still carrying out attacks. In fact, yesterday they abducted 13 girls in Borno State. So Nigeria is facing its biggest security challenges in history. And that is why the government is struggling to keep on with the fight against insecurity. More groups are coming up, and because of the impact of what is happening in the Sahel, gunmen are finding it very easy to cross into Nigeria and operate and go back. So these are some of the reasons. And we know that there is total collapse of governance at the local level. And that is why these gunmen and armed groups are always targeting rural areas where there is total absence of governance no presence of authority. And that is why they can just go in, kill as many people as they like, or abduct as many children as they like, and get away with them. So just imagine getting away with 300 people. That shows clearly that there is an absence of authority in many areas in Nigeria that we call ungoverned spaces.
And earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that Christians were being persecuted in Nigeria, and he threatened military action. Have his accusations added fuel to the fire?
Yeah, possibly, because these armed groups, they follow the news and they know how to stoke up tension. And I believe that those comments or these remarks by the President of the United States were reckless and were not based on facts, and they have not helped matters. But even without, I don't want to attribute them as the reason, but they might contribute. But the reality is that security is deteriorating. Things are not getting better because some years ago, we only have Boko Haram, but now we have another group called Mahmuda operating in central Nigeria. We have another group called Lakurawa operating in also northern Nigeria, and we have another group called Ansaru, which controls many places in Niger State. So these things have been expanding. We have not finished with Boko Haram, and we already have new groups emerging. So this is the reason why these things are getting out of hand.
Thank you very much. Issa Sanusi, Country Director of Amnesty International Nigeria. The Sudanese paramilitary rapid support forces have declared a unilateral 3-month ceasefire. This comes just a day after the Sudanese military, led by General al-Burhan, rejected the US-led ceasefire proposal, accusing the mediation team of bias and declaring the proposition as the worst yet. Since April 2023, Sudan has been devastated by a civil war opposing General al-Burhan's forces and the paramilitaries led by General Mohamed Hamdan Daglo. According to the UN figures, the war has resulted in over 40,000 deaths and forced an estimated 14 million people to flee their homes. European and African leaders are gathered in Luanda this Monday for the 7th European Union-African Union Summit aimed at bolstering economic and security ties between the two continents. Among the attendees, France's President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and the DRC's President Félix Tshisekedi and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. On the agenda, migration and critical raw materials, as well as trade, and Russia's war in Ukraine.
As they meet in Luanda, European and African leaders have a common goal. The aim is to deepen economic ties as tariffs and trade barriers are threatening economies worldwide.
In a more confrontational global economy, Africa and Europe need each other more than ever before.
With an estimated 467 billion euros of goods and services traded between the two blocs in 2023, the European Union is the leading supplier of foreign investment to the continent.
5 years after their inception, these high-level meetings between African and European leaders offer exceptional opportunities. They provide an opportunity to reflect on our common destiny, shared interests, and the future that we're shaping together.
From cobalt to copper, lithium, and rare earth minerals, Africa holds 30% of the planet's mineral reserves, and many sources are still untouched. The EU is seeking to limit its dependence on China, from which it buys almost all of these minerals needed for batteries and cleaner energy technologies. Beijing has already opened its own mines on the continent and ships the raw material to be processed back home.
That must be an opportunity.
The United Nations would like to see that model change and for the processing to happen in the countries of origin.
Value-added processing and production in the countries of origin.
And the EU and China aren't alone. The United States, Russia and Turkey have all joined the scramble for African resources.
The G20 summit in South Africa came to a close Sunday. Leaders hailed the resulting 30-page Johannesburg Declaration as a victory in spite of the glaring absence of the US. Among the key points of the declaration, the world top and emerging economies vowing to work together to help poor countries recover from climate-related disasters. Gabrielle Nadler has the story.
The summit is therefore closed. The word of the day was multilateralism. As South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, repped the G20 summit on Sunday, the countries in attendance showed their enduring commitment to the forum and economic collaboration. To some, this was an important symbol of defiance in the face of American isolationism. President Donald Trump pulled out of the meeting due to false claims that South Africa is persecuting the white Afrikaner minority.
Our agreement on a declaration during this summit demonstrates the value of the G20 as a forum that can facilitate joint action on issues of shared concern.
The non-binding 122-point Johannesburg Declaration focused on climate change and wealth inequality, including calls for increased funding for renewable energy projects and debt relief for poorer countries. The agreement was not the only example of U.S.-free multilateralism this past weekend. During the summit, European leaders, Japan and Canada discussed the U.S.-Russia peace plan for the war in Ukraine, calling for additional work on the draft.
At a time when too many countries are retreating into geopolitical blocs or the battlegrounds of protectionism, Canada believes that the G20 must remain a bridge.
Due to Trump's absence, the traditional handing over of the G20 presidency, which will be taken over by the U.S. in December, did not occur. South Africa, who refused a last-minute request from the U.S. to send a diplomat, said the handover will take place later, possibly at a foreign ministry.
And the world grieves the death of reggae legend Jimmy Cliff, who passed away at age 81. Cliff's wife, Latifah Chambers, announced his death in a post online early Monday, saying he had a seizure and subsequently suffered from pneumonia. He was known for the songs I Can See Clearly Now, or even You Can Get It If You Really Want. The reggae icon was also known for his love of the African continent, where he worked to popularize the genre. To talk about his life and career, I am joined by our very own James Vicina. James, Jimmy Cliff had a special relationship with the continent. Tell us more.
He had a special relationship, and one that came because success for him came relatively early in terms of the emergence of Jamaican music, in the sense that he was able to go to Africa whilst other of his contemporaries weren't necessarily. In 1974, he made it to Nigeria for the first time, and 74, that was a time where, as I mentioned, his contemporaries, such as the like of Desmond Dekker or Max Romeo, Dennis Brown, they were going over to England mostly to tour, or to the US. Obviously, the relationship within the United Kingdom and the US being closer. But, of course, to go to Africa was a bit of a further step, and so Jimmy Cliff did that and was met with huge success. Not immediately, though. At the beginning, he had a bit of a rough affair because of a contract issue with promoters over there, which ended up with some pretty difficult time with the police. Not his fault, but that came through organisation from over on the side with who he was touring. But then after that, he got to return and played in other countries as well, and even outside of playing, he also spent a lot of time there in Africa, just in terms of just in terms of taking it in and all. And this also comes in the context of course, within the Rastafari movement, there's the whole talk of repatriation, the idea of going, because I mean reggae coming up in a time where Jamaicans were reclaiming their identity and their African identity, and the talk of going back to Africa. And this is something that Jimmy Cliff actually did and lived it in that way. So a very special moment and a special life for him, between him and the continent and the world, of course. And
even though he is gone, he will not be forgotten, as he will live on through his music. We'll leave you all on this very famous song. Hope you can all recognize which one it is. And that's all from us for the moment. Stay tuned to France 24. We'll be right back with more news.
I can see clearly.